I'm so excited that you've taken time out to tune in to the Ella Johnson Show. I hope that you enjoy the broadcast. I hope you'll laugh. I hope you'll cry. But I hope that you'll be moved by what you hear. Well, my guests are very special to me, and so are you. So I want you to sit back, enjoy the show. What you can become depends on what you can overcome. Yes, I'm so excited about my children's book that's coming out, and I'm looking for some mahogany kids. I'll tell you about that later. It's time for the Ella Johnson Show. Coming up next on the Ella Johnson Show is an exclusive tell-all interview with Lurleen Hilliard from Canada. Lurleen is going to expose the corruption that's going on in Canada with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. You don't want to miss this broadcast. That's all coming up next, right here on the Ella Johnson Show. We'll be right back.
The time for change is now.
If you care about me when I do this,
Or when I do this, you should care about us when we do this. I won't always be an athlete, but I will forever be a black woman.
you've had my back here.
Now, have my back here. No one should feel unsafe due to the color of their skin.
All lives can't matter until Black Lives Matter.
Join us in the fight to end systemic racism.
Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter.
The RCMP has removed one of its officers from the front lines after he was caught on video threatening a man under arrest.
Part of the reason that people were feeling uneasy, Heather, is because there were actually 3 separate incidents on that day where that same officer pulled his gun. 2 of them were caught on video, and we do have one to share with you. Take a look.
I'm gonna kill you. Hey. Shut the up. You're under arrest.
RCMP is facing a mammoth new lawsuit, a $1.1 billion class action claim, and it contains allegations of harassment, bullying, and intimidation within the force dating back decades.
Hello, everyone. How are you? I am so excited. Thank you all so much for tuning in to the Ella Johnson Show. Now, I'm not going to pretend that I'm not excited about the verdict yesterday. I just couldn't wait. I couldn't wait to say that, but we're going to talk about that tomorrow night. But tonight, I have a very special guest. If you are watching the broadcast from YouTube, I need you to do me a favor. Just subscribe to the channel. You're already there. And if you're watching from Facebook, you know what to do already. Just share it. Share it so that everyone on your page can see this broadcast. Now, listen, I want you guys to think about something as we go through this entire show. I want you to know that conversations can change things, but you should never, ever, ever allow anyone to change that conversation. That's real talk. Because you know what? What we're doing tonight, this is something that I can honestly say I've never done on the Ella Johnson Show, where someone is actually going to come out and talk about corruption. But we had it, because here on the Ella Johnson Show, we do set the table for Real Talk TV. Now, if you are watching the broadcast and you've been following me, you already know about the petition. So I want you guys, if you have not signed the petition, please click on the link. You already know what that's about. We're not going to talk about that tonight, but that is to reopen an investigation into the Rhonda Morrison murder case. So please do that. Now, I want you guys to know we have a very special show tonight, and I want you guys to be involved. You're going to probably have some questions that you have for Lurleen, me, or whomever. But I want you to feel free to ask those questions, because we're taking a look at those, and she doesn't have a problem answering those questions. Right, Lurleen?
No problem whatsoever. I'll answer.
Well, I know you guys are waiting to hear from her. My guess, if you've been following me, you know that Lurleen has been a guest on my show before. She was on my show when we did domestic violence, and she was featured as a, domestic abuse survivor. And she's still a survivor, but she's here to talk about corruption tonight. Lurleen is a mom of two. She's a widow, and she lives in Canada right now, but she has a very serious topic that we're going to talk about tonight. Welcome to the broadcast, Lurleen.
Thank you so much, Alan, for this opportunity. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
You look beautiful, honey.
Thank you. Don't feel it. Thank you.
That's okay. That's okay. But you look beautiful, and what you're doing tonight is it's tough what you have to do, because you and I've talked at great length about this. But it's necessary, because what you're doing tonight, it does put Lurleen at grave risk, guys, because she's in a country and she's getting ready to expose corruption. And you all know that has to be something scary, but bold and courageous. So I'm glad that you decided to come here. Now, I want to bring everybody up to speed about you. Lurleen has been abused. She was in an abusive relationship. Her husband passed away, but she was raped repeatedly every single day by her husband. Her son was actually raped by her husband, and she survived all of that. And I am I am very proud of you, Lurleen, because, to have gone through all of that, to now be here where you are, says a lot about you. And I'm glad to be able to help in any way that I possibly can. Okay. You're going through a lot. So I just want you to know that I care. And if it gets a little tough tonight, y'all pray with her. I want you guys to encourage her. I want throughout the broadcast, I want you guys to please leave encouraging comments for her. She needs it. Her family needs it. But I want them to hear from you. Tell us who you are and tell us about your boys and all of that first.
Okay, well, as you said, I'm a survivor of domestic violence, physical, mental, sexual abuse. I met him when I was 19, married when I was 23, and he died last year when I was 51. For a number of years prior to his death, I was apart from him, but I was still legally married to him. He was a horrible man. He was abusive, an alcoholic, a very, very dangerous, manipulative, narcissistic man. I had 4 sons with him. I have 2 with me, and I have 2 that I'm totally estranged from because they're like their father. I had 4 miscarriages, and then I buried my only daughter, who was stillborn, at 22 weeks because of one of the beatings and rapes from him. So it was a pretty difficult time, but we got through it. I don't know if I've lost you, Ella.
I am here, but for some reason my camera isn't, but you're still there. You are still there. So wonderful. So, talk to us a little bit about, now I know that we're going to, come up to speed with everything else, but right now you are currently living in your car with your sons. And let's go back to when your husband passed away. Let's start there and tell us about where we are from there.
He died March last year. We heard about his death about 2 days after his death from one of my estranged sons. We, from the get-go, did not believe how he died. None of it made sense. It has taken us a year, and finally, Homicide have actually opened an investigation into his death. Despite the fact of everything he did to me, and in particular one of my sons, nobody deserves to have their life taken from them. You know, that's not my right, it's nobody else's right. And there were too many questions that were not being answered. But the main issue that we had was that he wasn't a wealthy man, but he did certainly have a nice lifestyle. He had money, he had cars, boats, everything. But the two sons that we believe, one in particular, was involved in his death, every time we'd ask a question about his death, they would get an emergency protection order against us. Now, I know myself, working with victims of abuse, how difficult it is to get an emergency protection order. When I had not seen one of my sons for over 8 years since he last tried to murder me, I didn't know how he would get a protection order, but he did, despite the fact there was a warrant for his arrest from the court that he stood in front of, and they ignored that warrant. He and his brother then basically got rid of the body. They removed it from the funeral home it was in. They cremated him with no service, no blessing, no nothing, which I personally disagree with, irrespective of your religious beliefs. I think everybody should have some sort of blessing of some type when they leave this world. It's just common respect. And they took everything in his estate. Their two siblings got absolutely nothing. They sold all the assets, they sold everything. They spent the money and they fled. And they left their brothers without anything.
So basically, when your husband passed away, he basically left you guys with nothing. So
no, he hadn't paid us any child support for 10 years. I had never asked him for it because I'm the type of person, if you don't want to support your children, I'm not going to go begging you for it. That's you. If you want to be a man, be a man. If you don't, that's your choice, not mine. So I didn't ask him for money. I'm not a person that ever asks anybody for money. I find it very difficult. So when he passed, I felt that they should have at least had their share. I didn't want anything, even though I was still legally his wife. I didn't want anything. But the other two took everything, and any time that we would question anything, they would put a protection order against us. So it's just myself and my two other sons.
Okay, so now you have your sons, and take us from there, because eventually what we're going to do is we're going to take everybody through the timeline of how you came in contact with RCMP and exactly what they did to you guys and what the corruption is. But let's talk a little bit more about, so you're in the country. When your husband did his paperwork, he didn't put you on the application. So tell everybody what that meant.
When he applied, he's a Canadian and an Irish citizen, because we're all from Ireland. So when he applied for his citizenship here, legally, he had to put us down on the documentation. Whether we were going to join him at some stage or not, that's beside the point. Legally, you have to put all of your family members down. He didn't. And the reason he didn't was just more control, it was more abuse. This didn't bother us until we actually found out after his death. And then I found out that I wasn't entitled to like citizenship automatically because I was married to a Canadian citizen. So I had to apply. So the process that I had to apply for, because I'm over 50 and apparently I'm too old, right? So I had to apply for, it's called humanitarian and compassionate grounds. And we had a very, very extensive file. I mean, it's a file that if an attorney does, it will take them 5 to 8 months to actually just do the file. So we did that. We paid the fee, which was just under $1,200. It normally takes between 2 and 3 years for it to be processed because it's so detailed. So once the application was in, it didn't bother me because I knew it was in and I could legally be here until it was being processed. That changed after our involvement with the RCMP. But yeah, it's just it's a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare.
So here we are now. He did not put you. So that means that you don't have citizenship there in Canada.
No, I don't have anything right now. I'm waiting. I don't want to be here. Neither me or myself, my two sons, and my son's service dog do not want to be here. We want to be out of this country because I
can understand.
Yeah, I have worked with victims of abuse, pedophiles, human traffickers all over the world. And I can honestly say, Ella, I have never in my life seen such corruption and abuse of power that goes on in Alberta, Canada. And it goes right to the top. And I don't care who doesn't like me saying that. I will say it because I've said it to them directly. Because it has to stop. This abuse of power, discrimination, racism, and brutality has to stop.
But what that means, though, Lurleen, the fact that you're not a citizen means that you can't get assistance. You can't do anything. You're stuck.
No,
you're pretty stuck.
Last Saturday, I won't go into one of the injuries why I was at the hospital, but my sons thought I was having a cardiac. I was extremely ill on Saturday, and I actually thought I was having a cardiac. I actually thought I was dying. I could feel my heart giving out. It took them hours to convince me to go to the hospital because I have no medical coverage, and it's just another bill we have. I did go, and I found out eventually what was going on, but it's scary because you literally don't know at any time of any day who's going to come bursting through block the truck in or pull us out of the truck, or at the moment we're staying somewhere but we can't really afford it after tonight, so we're back in the truck, but who's going to bust through the doors? It's like, even though we've had a bed for the last couple of days because of death threats, I sit up at nighttime watching the door, waiting for people to kick it in. And it's a horrible, horrible feeling to have.
Now, I want to take, right, I want to take everybody, I want to go back, though, because I want people to hear how you ended up in the truck. So you guys were living in a place, and your first thing was you were trying to help. This is your first time when you found out they were corrupt. Take us back to that, because that's where it all began, when you guys were helping the local law enforcement with this drug deal. Tell us about that.
I and my family are pro-law enforcement. We're not anti-police. We're pro-police, but we're anti-brutality and we're anti-corruption. And I think most people with any morals would be anyway.
Right.
After my husband died, we moved from that area. We didn't want to be around where my sons were. So we moved from there to another town in southern Alberta, probably about an hour from there. It was a small rural town. There's about 14,000 people in it. And my son rented a nice house, and we thought, this is great. Little did we know that the house beside us was rented to the town fentanyl and meth dealers. We found that out the first night we went there, when we literally went to get a pizza because there was no food in the house, and we couldn't get back into our own house because of the addicts queuing up to go in next door and causing arguments. I have no time for people on fentanyl and meth. I do not want to be around dealers. I do not want to be around drug addicts. I don't want them around me or my family. And we started seeing different things. They would park all their vehicles on our side. They would just make our life hell. One time we had a group of 10 of them surround us when we told them to move their vehicle that was full of drugs. We saw them put the drugs in, and we'd been watching them do this. My son has military training. He's trained in surveillance, so he knew exactly what was going on. And we were surrounded by 10 to 12 people. This was early June last year. And one of the neighbors called the RCMP, which was the police in that area. When they came up, it was like us that they went for. And we're going, hang on a second, we're the victims here. Like, they're the ones surrounding us. They're the ones attacking us. There's 2 of us and there's 10 to 12 of them. What's going on? One of the officers, we called her Smurf, and she basically threatened my son in our home. He told her that his PTSD was severely triggered because he saw a group of people trying to attack his mother. Now, considering he had grown up in a life of domestic violence, he had saved me so many times, he had stopped me getting the beatings, to see somebody else coming towards me, he's extremely protective, but most people would be of their parents.
Right.
And she threatened to kill him. So there was 5 officers there in total. 4 of them were the problem. We made a formal complaint to what's called...
Okay, wait a minute. Back up. You guys called the police because of the drug deals that were going on. And instead of them coming there to respond to that, they came and turned on you. Okay. All right. I just want to make sure that everybody's with us. All right.
Yeah, they turned on us. Now, there was a little girl that used to go in and out of that home. She was about 2 years old. And I had an issue because I would see what's going on in that home. And like a baby, she doesn't know what powder is or what's going on. How did I know that they're not abusing her? And I found out subsequently that her biological father had died the previous year. He was the prior or another drug dealer in the town, and the mom had moved on to this guy. So I had issues with that. I just did not think that was acceptable. But the RCMP did not want to know. Anyway, no matter what I did, I tried everything. Nobody would listen. We were the baddies. So the harassment was continuing. Every time we'd go into the town, there was like a Walmart, and one of the relatives of the dealer worked in this particular Walmart. And of course, everybody knew what we were doing. We were standing up for ourselves, right? And we had a cashier turn around to us, like many other people, told us to go back where we came from. In her Walmart uniform, gave us the middle finger. We took a photograph of it. You've seen that. And we tried to we left there. We just wanted nothing to do with that. Subsequently, it was getting worse. The harassment, the intimidation.
Now, at this point, I want to make sure everybody understands. At this point, you're feeling harassed because you're known to be the type of person to call on drug dealers. So that's where we are right now. Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
I'm not going to be intimidated by a drug dealer. Like, I mean, he might think that he's tough, but he's killing families. He's destroying lives. He's not going to...
Now, how receptive was RCMP to this information about the drug dealers?
They didn't want to know. And we knew from the start, the way they were going on attacking us, like they told us if we said or did anything against them, we'd be arrested. We've never had any criminal convictions anywhere in the world. My son has he works in the security field. He was an executive protection officer. He protected people. That's all we do, is protect people. And yet they didn't want us to be telling them what's going on. In actual fact, we were showing them what they were doing when they were doing it. And then we realized, hold on a second, these guys are all involved. And then people in the town who were against these dealers were telling us, oh yeah, they allow them into the town. They're the ones that do the checkpoints. They know when to go through, when not to go through. And go, now it all makes sense. It was like...
So RCMP was working with these guys.
Yes.
That's why they were retaliating against you. Okay. Yes. All right. Go on now.
Our landlord just happened to be the landlord for these guys as well. And our landlord refused to give us a front door key. If we wanted to go in and out of the house as a family, we had to climb in through a basement window. He refused to give us a mailbox key, so we never got our mail from that property. The heating in the property wouldn't go below 35 degrees, and he would not fix it. But then we found out about him, and it was a circle. The landlords was there. They rented this property for 8 years. It was hidden. There's no way to do surveillance on it without being caught, because it was in a cul-de-sac. And it was like a mom-in-law suite, so it was behind the front house, and the front house was another family member. So they were well protected. And we found out information about the landlord, about his father, and all of it came together. So I have a lot of friends who are police, and I contacted one of them in Alberta. He's a sheriff. And I said, what do we do? Like, this is crazy. And he said, contact the Alberta Sheriff's Scan Unit. And the Scan Unit is basically a unit specifically in Alberta. I'm not sure if it's in other parts of Canada, but it's specifically in Alberta, that targets a home that's being used for drug dealing. Now, it can be a rented or private home, but once there's drug activity in it, they target the home. So that's what we did. I sent off a ton of information to them. They got back to us very quickly. And the surveillance that we had for them, the photos, the videos, the plate numbers, they were sending us mugshots on my son's phone. They were like confirming to us on the phone, yeah, he's a known drug dealer. Yeah, he's a dealer. He's an addict. She's an addict. It was like, oh my God, what the hell are we living inside? It was crazy. But thankfully, I had put everything in writing. I'm a stickler for paper trails because then they can't say that we said or we didn't say something. So we had sent everything to them, and it was also then put on external hard drives. And they were getting ready to do a tactical assault on the house. In actual fact, my son was going to be drawing up a logistical tactical plan for them. We gave them the entry points, everything. They knew about the RCMP. These particular officers, it's one unit in this detachment. It's not the entire detachment, it's this specific unit of 5 people. And normally when the scan is involved, the RCMP are involved as well, but they didn't tell them, but they found out. And how they found out was because on the Tuesday before everything happened, we had filed a tenancy claim against the landlord. We wanted a front door key. We wanted our mail, you know,
of course,
the basic details. So we filed a claim against him for the tenancy court, and we gave very basic details about what was going on next door. We didn't give the details because we didn't know how involved he truly was at that stage. That was on the Tuesday. On the Wednesday, we got a phone call from this scan detective, and he was asking us about a particular vehicle. Had we seen it? And we said, yeah. He said, well, if you see it around, let me know. And we said, well, you know what? We'll go looking for it. So we did, and we found it. And it was directly connected to the landlord. That night, the vehicle came up to the road. Normally, the vehicles would come right up to the house or next door, but it didn't. It stayed down the road, and a guy all in black walked up to the property next door. He was in and out in 2 minutes. The next day, the Thursday, their entire routine changed. There was no vehicles, there was no addicts, there was no dealers. And going, okay, somebody knows something, because why have they changed their entire routine? These guys have been there, Ella, for over 8 years. They don't change their routines for anybody, right? But
unless they were warned.
Exactly. That's what this was. It was a warning. They are complaining about you guys. You need to change it or whatever. I don't know what was said, but clearly something of that aspect was said. That was on the Thursday. And then the fateful day of the Friday, when our lives changed, and it has been since then. We're in living hell.
Now, let's get, oh my gosh. So you were involved with trying to help the police catch the bad guys, if you will, but they were the bad guys. So they were letting the bad guys know that we got to change something up, because what they needed to do was show and prove there's something going on here. And that's why they were able to let them know, get away. Okay. Oh my gosh. So they're all in it.
They're all in it. At one stage, social services came out to see the child at the house, right? And about 2 hours beforehand, and I called the scan detective and I told him, I said, they're loading up the back of their pickup truck with boxes and bags. And then a social worker came, and when she went, they came back with the boxes and bags. You know, the RCMP, an officer went to check before the social worker was there. And after he left, they put a sofa out the front, and they had ripped with a knife, and you could see it was a knife. All underneath the sofa was torn out. Obviously, there was stuff in the sofa, and they had thrown out other items. Why do you throw out a sofa from your home for no reason, just when the cops come? You know, and we told them this, but they didn't want to know.
Now let me go back to something, because having been a landlord for many, many years, I know for a fact they were wrong to not give you a key. You're paying rent and you can't get in and out of your house. Plus, they're supposed to maintain the apartment or the house or whatever you were living in. What happened with the tenancy court? What happened with that, your complaint?
Well, that went to court on the Monday after the assault. So the assault happened to us on Friday, the 21st of August. And on the Monday, the tenancy court. We had been told that because we were self-representing, that they wouldn't be able to have legal representation, that they would have to self-represent as well, which is fair. That wasn't the case. It was over the phone. And when we got on the phone, they had a barrister who had already spoken to the judiciary or whoever it was that was making the decision. And we were just told that we were out. That was it.
Wait a minute. Without any type of warning, they just told you were out, meaning you're evicted?
Yeah.
Just like that?
Yeah, we said, well, look, we've no problems leaving. We don't want to be beside your guys, but we want our mail. We were refused our mail. I have an email from their attorney. On the day that we left, I said, I want my mail out of the mailbox before we leave, which is our legal right to get. It had been there for months. He refused. He said, you are not getting your mail. I have that in writing. That's from an attorney. This is how bad the corruption is. This town is filthy. I contacted the mayor in the town. I told him what was going on. I couldn't speak to him on the phone. He'd only talk to me on Facebook Messenger. Then he blocked me.
Wow. So you couldn't get anyone. Oh my God. So you had no help. So it's just you and the boys, and nobody's on your side. The people you thought were there to help you, you find out they're against you as well. Okay, yeah. So now you guys are out, you're evicted. Where do you go from there?
Well, before we were evicted was the assault. So I don't know if you want to discuss that or if you want to do that later on.
No, let's talk about the assault right now. Before you left, what happened?
On the Friday, the 21st of August, we didn't ever have a set routine, right? But one thing we had been told by the scan detective was they were looking for a particular vehicle from this guy next door. And they said, when he drives off in it next, call us and we will have the RCMP wait at the detachment and pull out behind them. We never got to make that call, right? We were going for coffee and into the town. My son loves his Starbucks, and we were going into the town. And when we went in, we just got as far as the detachment, and there was a RCMP SUV sitting there. He was ready to pull out, but he was waiting for somebody. As soon as we passed by, he pulled right out behind us. So we knew he was waiting for us. We were stopped at the red lights. We had valid registration, insurance, everything was valid and legal with the truck, and both my son and myself with our licenses. So he was behind us for possibly a minute, whatever the red lights were. And we drove on down the road and we came to another stop sign. And just as we went through the stop sign, the lights go on. So we went, what now? So there was a KFC and we pulled in, and we were on a secondary road. We weren't on the highway, we were on a secondary road. And we pulled in to the KFC. When we did, we got out of the vehicle. I'll be honest, my son was pissed because like at this stage, like he'd been threatened, we've done nothing wrong, yet we're the ones getting all the crap. We recognized that the officer who stopped us was one of the officers who had been involved in the original threat to my family. So we demanded to see a supervisor, a sergeant or somebody of a higher status than him. He laughed, he threatened my son. He said, what? He said, get back in your vehicle. My son said, no, I want to see a supervisor. He said, I have a complaint against you. You've already told me you're going to kill me. So why should I talk to you? I want a supervisor. And he said, well, do you want to talk to one in a cell? So that was an initial threat. At that time, for some unknown reason, my son's attorney had just rang his phone. It was just by fluke that he rang. He'd been dealing with my late husband's case and issues with that. And that was caught on video, right? So we kept asking for a supervisor or somebody else to come down. We walked back to the side of our vehicle, and with that, another officer drove in. This officer we call Quasimodo. And he got out and he said he was a constable. And I said, well, we asked for a sergeant. We asked for somebody in charge. He's a constable, you're a constable. you're no different to him. And you're part of that same unit. And he laughed. He was an arrogant asshole. And he said to my son, I want to see your license. So my son had a vest t-shirt on. He had a pair of sweatpants and flip-flops. That was it. He had no weapons. He had nothing on him. He had his license and he put it up in his hand like that. And he said, there's my license. And he said, give it to me. And he said, no, I want to see a supervisor, somebody in charge, and I will give it to them. You are not getting it, right? Because we knew exactly who we were dealing with. It was the exact unit who had threatened us. So we didn't have any trust with them. We were there for a couple of minutes and I was standing right beside my son. I had my phone in my hand. I had, the phone call for my son had got disconnected. So I actually called back the attorney from my phone and I had it on record. So although it's not on video, 95% of everything is on an audio recording. With that, a Ford vehicle, an unmarked RCMP vehicle, pulled up behind us. And an officer who we call Shrek got out of it. Now, this guy is one of the dirtiest, most vile people you can ever meet. I mean, when I say dirty, I mean he's physically dirty. His uniform is always disheveled. He has like one single gray hair sticking out between his buttons, and he thinks he's Don Johnson, right? He got out of he does. He honestly does. He has this arrogance about him that is just so obnoxious. He got out of his vehicle, and as he walked over towards where my son was, now we had our backs to them. I turned around and I saw him take his tactical gloves off his vest, and he was like this in an intimidating manner and like clenching his fists, right? Now, we were only talking, yeah, my son was not happy, but he had not threatened anybody. He had not done anything. You don't have to be happy when you're stopped for no reason by people who have threatened to murder you, right? He came up and my son turned around and said, here's Shrek. And as true as I'm sitting here, Ella, that is all he said. When he said, here's Shrek, Shrek turns around and says, you're under arrest, right? Now, he hadn't done anything. He dived at my son. And my son literally sidestepped. That's all he did was sidestep. As he did, the other officer, Quasimodo, moved over right in front of my son as he had his hands in the air and shot him with a taser. They shot him with the taser right at the nipple, which is illegal. You are not allowed to do that. And you're not allowed to use lethal force, non-lethal force, unless lethal force is being used against you. You're not allowed to use it here. There has to be a reason. We had no weapons. Saying here's Shrek is not a reason to arrest somebody, right? My son was standing beside me when they shot him. He fell, literally turned like 180 degrees, face first onto the ground. His head smashing off that ground, Ella, haunts me every single minute of the day. It was like a melon. It just whacked. He was immediately unconscious. He was.
What did you do? What could you do? What did you do?
I was standing there, hysterical. I was standing there with the phone in my hand. I think I went into shock because I was just hysterical. They put him in handcuffs. The officer who shot him, which is Quasimodo, his first name is Ian, and Shrek's first name is Mike, went onto his neck and put his knee into his neck, the exact same way as they did with that poor man, George Floyd. And he then went with pressure points. Now, the reason I know it's pressure points is because my son is trained in military and he had held his breath. If he had not held his breath, they would have killed him. He had 3 other officers punching him and kneeing him. Now, he was in handcuffs after being tased, unconscious. They then lifted up his vest t-shirt while he was unconscious and at point blank range, put the taser in his spine and fired the taser again. What threat is somebody when they're unconscious, they're in handcuffs, and there's 3 of you there beating the shit out of him, and one on his neck with a knee? Then Shrek, I was standing beside the truck, and I was actually talking to the attorney, and I was hysterical. I told him he's unconscious immediately. They're beating the crap out of him, everything that they were doing. I was standing there, and I have long hair, as you can see, and my hair was grabbed from behind, and I was thrown back against the truck. And it was by Shrek. Now, I was a witness at that time against Shrek. I had made a witness statement against Shrek for his threats to my family. So he should never have even come near me. He threw me against the truck and he grabbed my left wrist so tight that I actually thought it was going to break. I've never had anything, and I've been beaten over the years. It was vile. You can hear me on the recording demanding his name. His uniform is so dirty that I could not read his name properly. And he told me that if I didn't get out of the way, I was being arrested. I went, what am I doing? Let go of my wrist. And I was telling him to get off my wrist, right? Eventually he did. While he had my wrist, I had screamed out when he pulled my hair. My son was on the ground, unconscious. My scream woke him up, and he shouted out, Shrek, you touch my mother again, you're a fucking dead man, right? Now, Shrek, mother again, you're a fucking dead man. They have now said that he's threatened to murder police officers. Since when is Shrek a police officer? Somebody who's been on the ground, tased twice, had their head pummeled into the ground, was unconscious, hears his mother scream, they know his PTSD is triggered, and they throw those charges at him. They then put him in the vehicle.
So at some point he regained consciousness.
He regained consciousness when he heard me scream.
Okay.
When he heard me scream. And that was the only time he said anything to them, any type of threat. He said, Shrek, you touch my mother again, you're a fucking dead man. In Ireland, anybody touches anyone's mother, that's something that would be said. Like, people would turn around and say, maybe if they had kids that were really being low, say, I'll fucking kill you, excuse my language. That doesn't mean they're going to kill them. It's just the way that things are said. Different countries, different cultures, people say things differently. And Shrek did that on purpose because he knew that I was the weak point for my son. He knew how protective he was of me. When Shrek,
because of what all of the abuse from your husband, he always protected you. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I would be dead if it wasn't for my son. There's no two ways about it. Shrek, when he assaulted me, and I have no hesitation, and I put this in my statements, he did so with joy. He's a narcissistic sociopath. He enjoys abusing people. And I have no doubt in my mind that I am not the first nor probably the last woman that he will physically assault, because he enjoyed it. He had a look in his eyes that I've seen in my late husband's, and I've seen it in other abusers' eyes. I can't explain it, but it's a look that you know that that person is an abuser. Right. It's very difficult to explain, but it's something that is just there. My son was put in the back of the vehicle. Then they came over and I was standing at the side of the truck, and Quasimodo came over to me. Now at this stage, we were in COVID, right? It was locked down in COVID. None of them had any masks on, right? None of them had any masks, but they came over then to search the truck and they put a mask on. What were they going to do? Get COVID from the truck? Like, they didn't have it beforehand. Quasimodo, whose first name is Ian, grabbed my right wrist. Now I was on the phone to the attorney who could hear everything. And he said, I want to search your vehicle. And the attorney said, ask him on what grounds. And I said, on what grounds are you searching the vehicle? He said, I don't need to give you grounds. If you don't move away, I'm going to arrest you. And the attorney said, tell him it's an illegal search. And I said, it's an illegal search. You have no grounds. My son has no weapons. You have no reason to search it. And we still didn't even know at this stage why we had been stopped, right? He searched the truck. He told me if I didn't move away, I'd be arrested. So the attorney said, just move away. So he searched the truck, and they took panels off, and they wrecked, they broke different things in the truck. They didn't even find a cigarette. However, what they did find were 3 sheets of paper, which were related to the landlord's father, which I had printed out because we were going to call the detective that we were dealing with in the scan unit. It was talking about the father who was being called a Don, has vehicles that are paid over 200,000 cash for. Very few people have that type of money. And the amount of elastic bands that he was using per week. I didn't know what the elastic bands meant at that time, but subsequently I found out that Escobar and drug cartels and dealers, the amount of money they make is worked out by the amount of elastic bands they use every week to wrap up their money. They took photographs of this evidence on their cell phone. Why? It's paper, documents, there's nothing to do with them. They took photographs of it. Eventually, I showed them my driver's ID, license, insurance, And that was actually caught on video. I had that on video. Eventually, my
And who was
son was
videotaping? Were you
Me.
recording?
Yeah,
You were
I was.
recording.
I was so hysterical that most of it was only on audio, but I was able to get little bits on video because, to be honest, I couldn't see from the tears. I was having panic attacks. I could not breathe. And I actually thought my son was going to die because when he was 15, Ella, he was in a coma. He'd had 3 cardiac arrests and he had frontal lobe brain damage. I was told when he was in that coma, the best case scenario was my son would die, that if he survived, he'd have lock-in syndrome. I fought for my son to survive. I was the only one he reacted to when he was in the coma. The tear would roll down his face when I would say anything. And I was the one who the doctors asked to take out the intubation tube. And I fought for 1 year after that, every single day, to get him back to being as normal as possible.
Right.
He used to have seizures, everything. And all I could see is my son's dead again. And for what? He has done nothing. And they drove past. As they drove past, the officer left with my son. My son was in the back. Now, my son is a tough young man. And I have only for maybe deaths in the family of very close family members, not his father, but like my mom or stuff like that. Has he ever cried? He's not somebody who cries. He was crying. He was hysterically crying. And he said goodbye to me as he drove past. I was hysterical. I went home and I had asked them to get him medical attention and they just ignored me.
Who did you ask? Who did you ask?
RCMP officers. I asked Shrek. I asked Simpson. I asked all of them that were there. I want medical attention. I told them about his coma. I told them about everything, right? And they just laughed at me. I was hysterical. And I actually don't even know how I got back to his house. That evening, I called to the detachment. I called them quite a few times. And I kept saying, has he had medical attention? And they said no. Eventually, I got to speak to this guy, Ian. And at the time, I didn't know his name was Ian. We just knew him as Quasimodo. I didn't know his name was Ian. And he said to me, well, if he collapses, he doesn't have where to fall. He has a mat. I said, you cannot see inside somebody's head. I said, all you need to bang your head on the ground or on a table or anything is the wrong way. You can have a bleed in your brain and you can die. My son, and I went through everything, needs medical attention. I said, he also has medication here that's prescribed that I need to bring down that he hasn't had today. And I said, he also is hypoglycemic. So he's going to need sugar or food because he'd had nothing to eat. He told me to go down to the detachment and he said, how long will you be? And I said, about 20 minutes. To be honest, it was probably about 40 minutes because I just couldn't even breathe. I was just hyperventilating and I didn't know what to do. I'm in a foreign country. What do I do? I drove down to the detachment. I brought the medication with me and I brought a can of Coca-Cola. I knew they probably wouldn't allow the Coca-Cola in, but I just brought it anyway.
Right.
And as soon as I walked in the door, I was told you're under arrest. And for what? And he said, for not producing your ID and license. And I went, yeah, right. Knowing inside that I had a video of me doing just that. So they had a little dictaphone up on the table and they had all the forms to arrest me and everything printed out. So it was total entrapment, right? To get me down there with no attorney down there. If I had done something and hadn't shown my license, why didn't they arrest me earlier on that day? Why did they let me go if I had done something, right? So they had.
So they were talking about you didn't show your license when they made the stop. That's what he was talking about?
Mm-hmm, which I did.
That had already passed.
Yeah, hours prior to that. Hours prior to it. This was about 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. And this had happened about 5:30. So it was quite a few hours later. And I saw the recorder that they had there. So I deliberately said, I'm giving you my son's prescribed medication. He needs these tonight. I made sure I said it because I just knew in my heart and soul we weren't going to give them to him. And I said, can you give him this Coca-Cola? And they said, no. And I said, well, he's hypoglycemic. He will need food. He will need sugar. And they just laughed at me. So I left. They never gave him his medication.
Now, at this point, did you think I need to call someone else? at this
didn't know what
point.
to call. Who do I call? You know,
Right.
when the people who you're meant to call to protect you are the ones you need protecting from, who do you call? I called the scan unit detective that we had been dealing with, and he never returned any of my calls. None. He just totally blanked me. I don't know who to call. I'm in a foreign country. You know, I called a friend of ours back in Ireland, who you will have on later on, and he tried to help us as well. Subsequently, the next morning, about 8 o'clock in the morning, there was thumping on the door of the house, and I opened the door to see about 5 RCMP officers, different RCMP officers. I had no issues with these at all. They were very polite, very manly, and very professional. But they had a search warrant for my son's home for bombs and for weapons. And the reason they had that was because we're Irish. My son has a tattoo on his shoulder that says it's the Irish tricolour, so the Irish flag, and under it has Fighting Irish. He got that when he was a teenager as a boxer. He used to do boxing, and he had that tattoo. Just because we're Irish does not mean we're terrorists, right? And we still did not even know why we had been stopped at this stage.
Right,
we had no
right.
idea. I didn't know if my son was alive or dead. This officer told me, and his name was Ryan, that my son was a gentleman. He said, I went and got him food and I gave him his medication. I said, what do you mean you gave him his medication? He said, they never gave it to him last night. I went, oh my God. I said, is he alive? And he said, he's very, very distressed and he's in a very bad way. He said, but he is alive. He said, I asked him if there would be anything in the home and he said, no. And he said, the only thing he asked me to do was to not disrespect you and his brother. And I said, well, I appreciate you not doing that. And they even folded back up all the clothes. They went through everything. And to have people search your home, Ella, it's horrible. I mean, they're going through your underwear. They're going through everything. And when
Did you physically look at the search warrant? Was it signed by a judge?
Yeah, they had gone. Shrek had gone the night before to a judge. I don't know what he told him, but he got a search warrant. This constable or corporal who came to the house to act on the warrant said he had no idea why it was even issued. He'd never seen it being issued like that before, and he didn't even know the reason why. And he said that unit has nothing to do with us. And it was very clear. They were professional. The others were scum. So later that afternoon.
So they didn't leave with anything. They just searched and now they're leaving.
No, they left. And
okay.
Actually, I was going into cupboards and saying, oh, you haven't looked in this one. Do you want to have a look here? Because there was nothing in the house, right? So later that morning, this same corporal called me and he said, do you want me to give him a lift home? He said, when he's released, he said, they never did his documents. I'm going to do them. He said, so do you want me to give him a lift home? I said, you can ask him, it's up to him, or I can call down. And he said, well, he's told me he's had enough of us. He doesn't want, he said he'd rather walk. And I said, that's fair enough. He said, when he's leaving, I'll call you so you can collect him, which was fine. And there was no issues. When my son came home, Ella, what they did to my son, I thought I had seen the worst brutality ever. But what they did to my son in that cell was, if you saw it in Iran or Iraq or by ISIS, you'd say, well, it's maybe expected. They didn't know any better. These are meant to be professionals. These are thugs. They are brutes and they are scum of the earth. They refused him medical attention, despite the fact that he was falling around the cell, around the walls of the cell. Before he got into the cell, sorry, I meant to say it, they left him in the SUV in the detachment garage for at least 30 minutes. The handcuffs were so tight that his hands were numb. He couldn't feel them anymore. When they took off the handcuffs, his skin was found in the cuffs. Right? When he went into the cell, he asked for some water. They threw water at him. They put the floodlight, or not the floodlights, the fluorescent lights on. They left them on, full whack. They put the heating right the way up to the very top. He was seizing in the cell. He was vomiting up green gunge or bile or whatever it was. He put his head into the toilet in the cell. Now you can imagine how dirty that is. And for somebody to put their head in it to try and cool down. He asked, could he call his consulate? And they said no, they wouldn't allow him. He asked for his attorneys to call his attorney, and they said, what's his number? He said, I don't know, it's in my phone. They wouldn't give him his phone. He said, you can look at my phone, I just need the number. They threw a phone book at him. Eventually, the consulate contacted them, and the consulate freaked out at them because they said, you cannot refuse like anybody to speak to their consulate at any stage. The officer there was telling him that he cannot speak to the consulate, he needs to go. And she said, you do not need to go. If you need to speak to me for 10 hours, you speak to me for 10 hours. They cannot tell you when to go. They refused all medical attention. So he had been tased twice, once in the nipple, and there was holes on his vest t-shirt where the tasers went through in the front. But in the back, there's no holes because it didn't go through the t-shirt. They lifted up the t-shirt and they went straight into his spine. They broke a filling in his front tooth. They broke a chip out of his front tooth. His face had all cuts and bruises all over it. His arms were black and blue. His hands were purple and swollen for days. He, for days and weeks later, was vomiting nonstop. He would forget his words. He would go into staring into outer space. He was in a trance. He had a severe head injury. And because he was assaulted by RCMP, after 3 hospitals, I managed to get him seen to. Nobody would see him because they see you, and if the police assaulted you, well, as far as they're concerned, the police are right. They didn't want to know.
Wait a minute. So you're taking your son to the hospital. They're asking you, obviously, what happened?
What happened?
And you were telling them, RCMP did this to my son, and they didn't want to assist you at that point.
No, they were just total assholes. They were absolute horrible. Finally, a hospital did, and the only reason they did was because I called in advance and I spoke to hospital management, and I said, look, if my son dies, I'm holding you responsible because you are morally and ethically and legally obligated to treat him. He needs to be seen. And I told them what was going on, and I told them about the history, and they did see him. And they said that this was then about 10 days later when I finally got him seen to. It was like for 10 days, nearly 2 weeks, I couldn't get him seen to. And I didn't know if he'd go to sleep any day and he would not wake up, Ella. In that period of time, they didn't stop. As if that wasn't bad enough, they had managed to get us evicted. They had assaulted me. They had assaulted my son. The day after the assault on the Saturday, and I never do Facebook Live videos, I was hysterical. When I saw my son, I had to do something. So I did a Facebook Live video, and I was blubbering, I was sniffing, I was an absolute wreck in it, but I told the truth of what happened. On the Monday, I got a phone call from the Director of Law Enforcement for Alberta to say that ACERT, which is the Alberta Serious Incident Response Team, had been ordered to investigate the assault on my son and myself, which was absolutely fantastic.
That's good.
That was brilliant. The forensic guys came out.
But wait a minute. Are you evicted at this point? At this point, you're already evicted?
We were still in the house.
You were still in the house at this point. Okay.
Yeah, we had an eviction notice, but we were still there.
Okay.
And the forensic guys came out to the house. Literally, I think it was the assault happened on the Friday. He got out on the Saturday, and it was the Tuesday when the forensics were there. And they saw everything that was gone. They were shocked by his injuries. They they said the one for the taser at the nipple, they said is highly illegal. They took photographs of everything. So we thought, well, maybe finally we'll get some justice, we'll get some accountability. No, that was only the start. Later that week, we had a knock on the door, and it was immigration. And they wanted to see my passport, which I gave them, and they handed it back to me. They then wanted to see my son's passport. He handed it to them, and they took it. They didn't give it back to him. Now, there was no court order requiring him to hand his passport in, to stay in Canada. There was no bond even set. He was released without any bond. He was just told not to be near those officers, which was fine. He didn't want to be near them. but there was nothing else, Ellen, right? So they took his passport. A few days later, he got an email, and he obviously wasn't able to answer his emails, and I looked at it, and it was from the Office of the Solicitor General in Alberta. Now, my son worked in the security field, so in order in Alberta to work in it, you need to have a license in Alberta to work in it. He had full, clean police records since 15, I think was the youngest I had copies of. He's never had anything from Canada, Ireland, Northern Ireland, UK, everything. And it was from them saying that the RCMP, who had illegally contacted their office to tell him about the charges against him, right? Now, remember, he hadn't even been convicted of anything at this stage. These were just allegations they had made. They demanded that his license to work was revoked. So they had got his passport seized. They had got his ability to work, if he got better, revoked, because that's all he knows how to do. And we were evicted. Within 7 days of the assault on us, so by the 28th of August, right? Now the assault happened on the 21st of August, right? His passport was taken and his ability to work was revoked. The drug dealer moved from the property. So the scan investigation into them ceased. So the RCMP escaped accountability. The investigation was null and void. It was gone. Everything was gone.
Okay, wait a minute.
Benefit.
Okay, oh my gosh. Your son was arrested. He was let out. We still don't know what their charge was. There was no conviction there or anything. So now that you're back at the house, these officers show up for the search warrant. They find nothing. Now you get back, and the immigration shows up. They take his passport and his license.
They took his passport. The Solicitor General, which is another department that the RCMP contacted, took his license.
So now he can't work and he can't leave the country.
No. And the RCMP Victims of Crime Unit, which is ironic, contacted us, told my son that we were victims of crime. Now, the criminals we're meant to be victims of are their officers. And they said that they had no right or legal authority to do what was done in relation to his licenses, but it was still done. And nobody wanted to know. But it gets better. It doesn't stop there, Ella. We then became homeless. And from September the 30th up until right now, we're homeless. We lived in his pickup truck through the winter in Canada, which at times went to -50. On many occasions, we nearly froze to death. We had one morning, and it was the first.
I want to show this picture. Lurleen, I want to show this picture right here.
Yeah, that's inside the truck. The window's inside the truck. That's the ice, and that's my son.
This is a good picture here, guys, of how Lurleen and her children were living inside the truck. Just to give you an idea.
That's actual ice on the window. Inside, not outside, inside. We used to have to scrape that off just to try and see out the window.
So you had ice on the inside of the car?
That was on the inside. That wasn't on the outside, Ella. That was on the inside.
How do you get ice on the inside?
Because we couldn't afford to keep the truck running all night with gas. So it freezes up and you just wrap yourself up and hope to God that you'll survive and put it on intermittently. And it was some of the scariest times of our lives. I mean, we park up in car parks and truck stops on the side of the road. You don't know who's around. You don't know what's going to happen.
So how old are your sons? How old are your sons and they're in this truck with you?
And one is 26. The one that's 26 is the one that was assaulted. The one that's 19 looks on the 26-year-old as a father figure. He has raised him as such from he was 9 when his dad, his biological father, my husband, left. And he's raised him and instilled morals, values, discipline, everything into him. He's an amazing young man. They both are. But the 1st of February this year, we were found by the RCMP literally nearly frozen to death. There are 3 RCMP members who I can never say enough about. One is called Bridget, one is called Tom, and one is called Glenn. And they're exceptional examples of what a police officer should be. But the reason I remember the day was because my birthday was the 31st of January. And we had gone where we were being parked up in the area. It was very cold. It was -29 that night. And we went to a Tim Hortons just to get a muffin for my birthday. It was like, boys were saying, you have to have something. So we went there. As we drove in, the truck died. And we didn't know what was wrong with it because we'd driven there. And the battery was just totally dead. We asked numerous people if they would help us. We had jump leads and they wouldn't help us. And then we figured out that it was the fuel pump. The next morning at 6 o'clock, we were found by an RCMP officer called Bridget, soaking wet, covered in ice in the truck, where we had literally nearly frozen to death because we had no way of heating the truck. We were literally in -29 all night and nobody would help us. She helped us, and Victims of Crime unit helped us initially. But there's only so much they'll do, and when they've done what they can, then they say, bye, you're on the run.
So there's no money.
No.
Lurleen, there's no money.
No.
How are you eating?
We eat when we can. Generally speaking, we eat every second day or so. A couple of weeks ago, 2 weeks ago this Friday, things changed drastically again, where we had a phone call about what was going to be done to us. And the little bit of money that we had for food, we had to pay to get off the streets because we were actually going to be raped and murdered. On the 9th of February this year, those officers were informed that there was another external investigation into their abuse of my family. And that was on the 9th of February. On the 10th of February, a tiny storage unit that we had hours away from where this incident happened, because we were nowhere near them. It was only a 5x10, and we had a lot of stuff, photographs and different things, and bits and pieces that we had that we didn't want to lose, but having them in the truck bed in the ice and cold, they'd get destroyed. Well, the storage unit was broken into. It was the only unit out of 1,100 units that was broken into. It didn't stand out from any other units except it was ours. They stole.
How would they have known that it was yours? How would they know?
Every time these RCMP officers were informed of something that was being done against them, something would happen to my family. Every single time. They stole folders that we had with our evidence against them printed out. Now, what they didn't know was it didn't contain everything because it's on external hard drives and it's with people around the world. I'm not that stupid. It's not going to be all there. They stole my immigration folder. And they stole something that broke me like nothing has ever broken me in my life. 23 years ago this September, my only daughter was stillborn at 22 weeks after I had been beaten and raped by my husband. I had to deliver her on my own in the hospital while he was with his mistress. I organized her funeral. I carried her coffin. And some years later, where she was buried in Ireland, they decided to turn that section of the cemetery into a tourist attraction. Dig up all of the babies' graves, not just mine, and with JCBs and diggers, dump them and turn it into a rose garden where they charged people $10 to walk where our babies were buried. That destroyed me because that was the last place I could go and I could talk to her. And even if she wasn't there, it was still, in my mind, that was her little garden. Mm. And I had a folder that I had carried with me from the day of her birth. It was her scanned pictures. It was her tiny wristband from the hospital. It was her service, the cloth that was on her coffin. It was the cards from family members who are now gone. It was everything to do with my baby. It had the only photos I ever had of my baby and me. And when they broke into the storage unit, they stole it. They took that. They left laptops, they left weed whackers, they left different things that were money. So we knew that was a planned break-in. You know, if somebody breaking in a burglar doesn't rob a folder, what use is it to them? You know, they would have taken the coats or the clothing or stuff they could sell and get quick money for it. They didn't. About 2 weeks after that, and that was like the 10th of February, I then got an email from the guy in immigration who had taken my son's passport, telling me that in mid-February, now remember this was the 10th of February, he started to review the file, which to me was a big coincidence, right? My biometrics had been taken the end of January. Now it takes 2 years without COVID for the file to even be processed. Yet he had decided that I was criminally inadmissible to Canada. Criminally inadmissible. I've never had any conviction anywhere in my life, but because of these charges. And he started harassing me every single day. He kept emailing me and saying he wanted to give him a call by the end of the week or in a few weeks' time to arrange to meet. And I said, no problem. I will touch base with you and we'll arrange something. Then he'd come back saying, no, I want a date and time. And I said, well, I can't give you a date and time right now because he's hours away from where we were and we've no way of getting there, right? And feeding my family is more important. So that basically was hassle from them. And then 2 weeks ago this Friday, my two sons and I were in the truck. It was about 8 o'clock at night and we were just sitting watching a show on the laptop. And his phone rang. Now he had a new phone number that nobody had except the RCMP. Nobody had it. And the reason we did that was we wanted to see if anything happened, then we know where it came from. This person rang and told my son that they had our folders, how they wanted to rape my baby daughter or his sister. They weren't sure if it was his daughter or sister. Even though she was dead, they wanted to rape her. She died of rape because I was raped, Helen. He won't tell me everything else that they said about what they wanted to do to her because he said that it would kill me. He said, I can't tell you. They told him how they were going to rape me and murder me in front of him, do the same to his brother and then to him. That they were on their way to us. Now remember, they had our phone number. So we called the local RCMP and we said, look, can you set up a sting if these guys are coming for us so that you can arrest them? All they wanted was a statement. He said, we don't have time for a bloody statement. Our lives are in danger. We have just had death threats. We know they have our documents because of what they said from them. They were laughing as they looked at my baby girl's photos. And I have no photos of her now. I have nothing that belonged to my baby. They took everything. So we fled the area, not knowing where we were going to go. And we managed to get in a place, I won't say where, but it's like a room that has 2 beds, it has a small kitchenette, and it's 45 Canadian dollars a night. And a few people helped us, and we managed to get a few nights. But as I'm from tomorrow, we're out of here because we don't have anything. We have no money for food, we have no money for anything. We have asked everybody to help us, Ella. Everybody, and nobody wants to know. We have asked the Irish government and the embassy. They don't want to know because they believe the crap that the RCMP are telling them, despite the fact we have everything on audio. And to show you the level of corruption, the RCMP officer who assaulted me, they don't wear body cams, but they had cameras in their SUVs. The assault on me has been removed from the SUV camera. They tampered with evidence. They removed it. The RCMP, a staff sergeant for the Deputy Chief Commissioner of the RCMP, told me 2 weeks ago that there's no assault against me. I went, hang on a second, there's no assault against me? And he said, no. He said, there's nothing on the camera. And I said, well, you've a problem. And he said, well, I said, because I have it on audio. And you can hear him talk to me, and you can hear me talk back to him. So I said, he's tampered with evidence. They said that I tried to assault a police officer, and he put me in a bear hug. On my baby daughter's soul, that never happened. I stood there in shock when I saw my son. I thought he was dead, Ellen, on the ground. And then I was assaulted. All we did was try to help them. On the 21st of March this year, we were sitting in the truck again, and I was on my Facebook page, and there was a person who had posted something in a particular group, and he was very angry at his ex and losing his child and everything. And he was going to post videos and everything about her and try and destroy her. And I messaged him. I said, look, don't do that because they'll use it against you. You won't have any credibility. Don't put anything on Facebook because you don't know who's watching your page. Well, it turned out that he had a murder plan. And I mean an actual murder plan. He was planning to murder his ex, her new partner, and their son, an Edmonton police officer, and all that he loved, a homicide detective from the RCMP, and his entire family, whose address he had. And he was planning to murder them. He sent me 58 messages on how he was going to murder them, what he was going to do. Now, if I was anti-police and we were such thugs, we would have just left him to it. We contacted the RCMP. That man was arrested. And I was told afterwards that I had saved many lives, that I had saved the families of these people, that the threat was real. He was planning it. He was going to go out dying. He wasn't going to jail or prison. He wasn't going to court. He was going to die with them. We helped save lives, but nobody will help us. We don't want to be here, Ella. We want to get out. But now what they're trying to do is for me and my youngest son to leave. They want us out. That's fine. We don't want to be here. But they want my son to stay here. What is he going to do on his own? He has no money. He has no home. He has no ability to work. He'll be illegal.
So they want you and one son to leave, but they want the other one to stay.
And I'm not doing that. I'm not leaving them. If they do this when we're here, Ella, what are they going to do? I don't sleep. We don't sleep at night. We take it in shifts, even in the truck. And even though we've a bed for the last 5 nights, I don't sleep. I sit up all night. You've seen it. We've texted all hours a night. I sit there waiting for people to kick in the door because of what they've put on the system about my son being violent and everything. If calling somebody Shrek, and saying if you touch my mother again after being seriously injured with a head injury and beaten to a pulp makes you violent, well then you shouldn't, there's a problem. There's something wrong there. That's all he said. He never said anything else. He has no attorney. I've no attorney. He has legal aid, and he wanted a particular attorney with legal aid who has taken on police cases like this. But legal aid refused to give the certificate, even though this attorney is a legal aid attorney, refused to give it to him. And instead, 2 weeks ago, you have to call into the court when you have a court date here just to say that you're here, and the judge will call you for an update or whatever. He called in, and he was called in at 8:15 in the morning. By 11 o'clock, there was no call back. So I sent an email on his behalf saying, I just want you to know I've called in and what's going on. And 2 o'clock that afternoon, they sent an email to say, oh, your attorney has adjourned it. You know, what attorney? They had given his legal aid certificate to an attorney who has the worst rating in the province of Alberta. It's on the internet. People are saying you're better off not having any attorney than this guy. He went to court having never spoken to my son, never on the phone or anything, adjourned it and asked for all the evidence to be sent to him. What do we do? Nobody wants to help us. We are waiting. The threat against us is really real. They're going to burst through the door where we are. They're going to stop us in the car. They're going to kill my son and me. And the reason we spoke out. I can't stay quiet when I see other people being hurt. It's not who I am. It's not who my son is. But nobody will help us. And I'll probably regret saying this on air because I don't know who's listening, but I'm an honest person. And you know this. 10 days ago, I thought about ending my own life because I felt that my sons, if I wasn't around, that people would help them, that it would might possibly cause an uproar, and that if I wasn't alive, that my sons would get help. I didn't do anything because I couldn't leave them. But despite being beaten, raped, burying my daughter, and everything else my sons and I went through in life for over 20 years, nothing has broken us like this. And nobody cares, Ella. You do, and some others do. But when I say nobody cares, nobody in power cares. because they're all as corrupt. I don't care. We're just all statistics, and if you speak out, you're a troublemaker. And it has to stop. Police brutality has to stop. Just because you wear a uniform does not give you the right to take anyone's life, does not give you the right to intimidate or abuse other people. I don't care what color your skin is, what religion you are, what gender you are. We're all human beings, and they need to treat us like human beings, but they're not. I can't even sue those cops, because in Alberta, you're not allowed to sue them. You're not allowed to file litigation against them. So he can abuse me. He has left me with a torn rotator cuff. When I went to the hospital last week, I have, as you know, for months now, I've been unable to move my shoulder, and literally I have to even try and get the boys to brush my hair. I can't move my arms up. It turns out that when he pulled my wrist so hard, it wasn't my wrist that he broke. He ripped the tendons and the muscles holding my shoulder in place in the rotator cuff. But there's nothing I can do. I just have to deal with it. Why should I have to deal with it? They don't want us here. They told my son if he apologizes, that they'll drop the charges. Why should he apologize to them when they've destroyed his life? Because if he apologizes, then all the complaints, everything against him goes away, and they can move on and do it to somebody else.
Will they give him back his license and passport if he apologizes?
He doesn't care about the license here because he doesn't want to work here. He just wants out of this country. He wants his passport so he can leave. There is no court order, Ella.
I saw that because I did some research, Lurleen, and you're absolutely correct. They had no grounds to take his passport.
No,
because based on the law there, you have to have grounds. It has to be court ordered.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they said that it was taken under, I think it was section 36(1), if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong on that, but it basically means that you're criminally inadmissible to Canada, right? Now, that means you have to have had a conviction prior to your arrival in Canada, which he's never had, and he has no conviction in Canada. When we queried that with them, they said, oh, it's under section 140. 140 means that it's a fraudulent document. It's not a fraudulent document. It's a legal document. And the Honorary Counsel for Ireland, a lady called Judy Cahill in Alberta, told my son that he is being held hostage, which is the truth, by the Canadian government because they have no legal authority to hold him and to tell him he cannot leave the country. They can't.
Are you afraid, Lurleen, that this video will cause some problems for you? Are you afraid?
Oh yeah, I am. I know shit's gonna hit the fan. I do this, but you know what? I can't live with this fear. Even if they do kill us, at least you guys and everyone out there will know the truth. There's people have the evidence. And
they're not going to kill you. You're not going to die. Lurleen,
kill my son.
You're not going to die. You're going to make it through this. I know it's tough. I'm going to bring on one of your friends. Fenton is here waiting. And hi, Fenton. How are you? Welcome to the broadcast. Uh-oh, wait a minute. There you are.
Yeah, excuse me for being at this angle. I have a disability at the moment, so excuse me for being at this angle.
As long as we can see your good-looking face. That's all I care about. Well, Fenton is Lurleen's friend. They've been friends for like 10 years. He lives in Ireland right now, and he has, just like Lurleen said earlier, been helping and fighting for her and doing everything that he possibly can. Welcome to the Ella Johnson Show, Fenton.
Thank you. And not only is it good to be here, it's good to see a good human being like yourself, Ella, because they're few and far between. I'm sure Lurleen will agree.
Yeah.
Well, listen, you know what? I think we're all in this thing together. And when Lurleen was on my first show about domestic violence, she was just incredible. And we've just been keeping in touch ever since. And I think that it's just our obligation that when we have a platform, we have to use it to do good. And that's what this is all about. And I just want you to help me let her know she's going to make it through this. I know it's rough. Tell us a little bit about what you know about Lurleen, Fenton.
Okay, well, first of all, I love her. and I love her family. And just for people that are watching now, I know there's people watching from quite a few different places around the world. Just to give an example of what this lady is like. She made international headlines when she discovered this child that was being walked around the room on a dog lead and fed in a dog bowl. She, from where she was at the time, reached out to people, army friends that we won't go into any detail at the moment, who flew into that country and saved this child's life. That's the level and depth of Lurleen Hilliard and her family. That's just a prime example when all the world has got nothing better to do or won't do anything. She did that and saved that child's life. And that's what she's been doing all her life as an advocate over the last 20 years. And I'm glad to be her friend. I'm glad to know her. I'm honoured to know her and her family. I want to tell you about the Irish government. I contacted the Irish government in relation to the embassy in Ottawa. And there's an expression we have here called the thick Irish. And there's some very thick Irish people working in the embassy in Ottawa. What the Ottawa embassy told me when I contacted them first was that they had X amount of information that I wasn't party to. And I said, well, you're wrong about that, because the information that you have, I have before you have. So that's the first thing. Then I contacted the Irish embassy in Dublin and the main parties in power. Like everything else, everybody in Ireland put things on the long finger. They were telling me that the information I had was incorrect. And I explained to one of the main people, one of the consulates in Ireland, that she should get her facts together. She should take a look at all of the documentation and not just read some of it. She sped read it, picked up the wrong information and tried to relay that onto me. So in no uncertain terms, I told the Minister for Tourism what I thought of him. I told his press office what I thought of him. I told everybody along the way. Eventually, a gentleman called John, who didn't give me his surname, but he was the head consulate in Ottawa, and he said, I got the public to bombard the embassy with phone calls and emails. I literally gave out the email and the phone number and asked the Irish and UK people from America, Spain, Canada. They rang and made that man's life a living hell. So much that he had to ring me, which is what I wanted. So I wanted to give him the facts. When I gave him the facts, he said that it was Dublin's fault, not his fault. So you see, this is what we're up against. Everybody wants to use COVID as an excuse. The Irish political people in power should be whipped within an inch of their life. The Irish government should be made watch and then whipped within an inch of their lives, because they don't represent me. They don't represent Lurleen. They don't represent anybody. Unless you've got, in Ireland the way it works, unless you've got a big fat business and a big checkbook, you're not important. And it's the same in Canada. So I know there's people listening from Canada right now. So I'm going to say to them, I don't know how you people can live where you live. Your comments are very, very good and much appreciated, because I've been reading them in relation to Lurleen. But in life, you're given one opportunity in life, and that is to be good and to be who you are. This is your opportunity as a viewer to do something for this lady who has spent her entire life doing for others. This is your opportunity. Don't waste this time.
What can they do, Fintan? People that are watching from Canada, what can they do?
Well, I think, in Canada, we have, and Lurleen has a list of people that both she's contacted and I've contacted. There's somebody on there saying you should come to see them on the East Coast. That was very nice of Cheryl L. Bullock, who's been a great support person for Lurleen. In fact, most people are very, very good. The reality and situation is right now, if I could get there and bring them home, I would do that. The reality with COVID is they won't allow me to travel and they won't allow them to travel. So what they're doing is they're being extremely vindictive. They are trying to rip a family apart because they know that that is the only thing that will hurt the family. They know they can't divide them any other way. They know, and let me tell them something. Let me tell everybody listening in power in Ireland and in Canada, you have opened a can of worms that you wish you have never opened. Until the day I die, I won't stop pushing for Lurleen and her 2 children, no matter what it takes, no matter where I go or what I have to do. They call me in Ireland a big mouth and they call me a troublemaker. Yes, I am, but it's only for good reasons, Ella.
I know it. I just love you, and I love the way you're a big mouth for her. Lurleen Scott Biggs just said, does she have a GoFundMe or Cash App? And she does not have a Cash App, but she does have through PayPal. She can receive funds through PayPal. And Scott, we can get together. Would you like to share that information now, Lurleen? Because what she can do is, if you want to give, you can send a request, and it's through PayPal, in other words, that she can receive. So if anybody that's watching this broadcast and you want to give, please, because tonight and tomorrow she has to leave the hotel and it's back to your car, correct?
Yeah.
Well, that's not going to happen because the Ella Johnson Show is going to take care of at least the next 2 days for you. So when we get off this broadcast, I need you to have the hotel give me a call so we can square up the next 2 nights for you, okay? Because I want you to be comfortable, and we'll do that. All right?
Thank you, Ella.
No problem.
Thank you so
No problem.
much, Ella.
No problem, sweetie.
My other son, my younger son, where we are, he fell 2 weeks ago, last week actually, and he broke 2 bones in his wrist. So I have 1 little cast. My other son is trying to recover from his injuries, and I have the rotator cuff. So thank everybody so much. I find it very difficult to ask anybody for help. I'm weird, I suppose, in many ways. I will help anybody. I would give anybody anything. But I can't find asking people for help. I always feel so.
I know we have to basically run, but you know what, sweetie? We have all needed help at some point, all of us. And this is how God works. This is how he works. This is how he moves through the hearts of other people. But if people don't know what you're going through, they can't help. So that's what we wanted to do on this show, was to make sure that people understand what's going on. Now, Fenton, let me ask you a question. What legally, how do we get all 3 of them out of there? What can we do? What do we need to do?
Well, this the simplest thing is, from a legal perspective, the person that can change all this is the head of the RCMP. He can instruct the people on the case to give Reese his passport back. It's been held illegally. In fact, I will be telling the Irish consulate tomorrow in Dublin that they should be pressing charges against the Canadian government, because a passport is the property of the Irish government. It's the property of the Irish government, okay? So you wouldn't get away with doing it. Canadian people that are listening, and if somebody came to Ireland, this would never happen in Ireland. As stupid and backward as we can be at times, this would never, ever, ever be allowed to happen. The Irish Ottawa Embassy, tomorrow, I'm going to be ringing them now again. I ring them every day. I email them every day. That's the property of the Irish government. So the Irish government, failing that, Ella, the only thing we can do is try and get somebody locally that you can trust to legally represent Lurleen and her family. The first person that represented them, just to give you an idea, has made tens of thousands of dollars on their case and hasn't done one single thing for them. you know, he has sort of used them by proxy to make an awful lot of money. And then when when things got hot, he ran. But what he forgets is, and he might need to remember, and I'll be the first one to remind him, that he was on the phone to Lurleen when that happened, and he heard all that happened. So he can run away like the rest of the Canadian snakes in the grass, but he won't be allowed to get away with anything as far as I'm concerned.
Now, before I lose this message, I want you to see this, Lurleen. Yolanda is, she's one of my friends. She's my sister. She lives here in the States, in Florida, Pensacola, and she has offered to pay for 3 nights for you.
Wow.
Thank you so
And
much.
so if we got the next 2 and she does the next 3, then that takes you through the weekend.
Thank you
Okay?
so much. I cannot
So-
thank you
Very
enough.
good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yolanda. God bless you, sweetie. I love you. Love you so much.
There's a lot of people in the UK, in Minksy, a lot of people in Canada that have helped us, and in the USA. And I want to thank them. And some people in Ireland as well have helped us a lot. And I want to thank them so much, because it's the people in power who won't do anything. It's not the ordinary person. Their hands are tied and they're scared because they see what they're doing to us. And they don't want to happen to their family. And I can understand that. But what people have to remember is that my son and me, it could be you tomorrow. It could be your son, your daughter, you driving down the road. And the reason why, Ella, we were stopped initially was because on our plate, on the registration plate, there was blue paint. Now you could still see the plate. It was registered, it was licensed, it was insured, and they gave a ticket for $500 for the plate. And that's why we were stopped. But it just happened that the officer who stopped us, his partner, is the husband of the officer who said she was going to kill my son. They're all in the same unit. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I can tell you this much. When you add 2 and 2 together, it adds up to 4. This is a jigsaw puzzle that's come together, and we've opened a massive can of worms.
But Fenton, how do we protect her from, because she really thinks that they're going to try to kill her. Do you believe that?
I do believe that. I also believe that her son is an exceptionally good mind. And I know people over the years, he's an exceptionally gifted person. He's got incredible foresight. He's managed to get through this process of having brain damage that's probably going to affect him for the rest of his life. And he's able to come through all of this: snow, bad weather, truck falling off the side of the road, a paedophile approaching his younger son, his younger brother, while they were at a garage trying to befriend them. They've come through all of these, all of Lurleen's past. They will get through this. I think it's going to be a case of the Irish government having to work with, whether they like it or not, work with the Canadian government. But failing that, we're sourcing some legal people here in Ireland and some legal people in Canada that can work together to get them out of this immense situation they're in. My focus is really, and all they want, which is not much to ask, is to be left leave the country.
But they want to all leave together, all 3.
Of course.
I
Yes.
don't blame you, Lurleen, for not leaving your son, because you already know. Like you said, if what they did to him while you're there, just only imagine if you leave. So
and since he was 10 years old, he's protected me. He pulled his father off raping me when he was 10 years old. I didn't know he had been raped by his father when he was 5. I didn't know that until he was in his teenage years and he told me. I watched him die 3 times in a coma, have his cardiacs, fight to survive, fight to get him back, fight for him to excel in his dream job and do everything. I am not leaving my son. My 2 sons are the only family I have. I have a very close godmother in Ireland and cousin, my Auntie Molly and Siobhan, and it's like the sister I don't have, and it's like my mom, but my parents are dead. That's all I have. I am not leaving them. Would you? Would any parent leave their son or daughter? You wouldn't. Why should I? Knowing what's coming next. I don't want that phone call to say, oh, he had an accident or he was found dead, because that would kill me. I could not handle that. I genuinely could not handle that.
Now, Fenton, can they force Lurleen to leave her and her son without the other son? Can they force her out?
I think in the legal sense, I think they can. From the point of view of a judicial stance. However, morally, I don't think any judge would actually do that. But there's nothing to stop these corrupt RCMP officers to try and cause as much trouble as possible. Now, I feel that the reason that they're doing this so much is because they're hiding the big people that are probably in government or local businessmen. So they will be as corrupt as they are. But, like, you know, the reality is they're no match for Lurleen. That's the reality. That's the reality. The Lurleen that you see now is an incredible person who's after going through so much that other people would have taken down entire families. You, Ella, have no idea of the type of godliness and holiness that surrounds this family. You, when you are with them, you can feel the energy, the positivity, everything just oozes from every pore in their body, all three of them. And I think the reality is when you've got negative people in this world, they cannot stand people that are articulate, energetic, vibrant, good people. It just soul destroys them. But Lurleen, you know, and I know, they will never, ever, ever get the better of you. Ever.
I think one of the hardest things was when they told my son on the phone, when they bragged about having my baby daughter's photos, knowing that I have nothing. The only thing I have belonged to her is a tiny little pacifier that was a charm the boys gave me. But anything that was on my, I don't even have one photo of her. I have nothing. Her certificate to say that she was born. I don't have absolutely nothing. To know that these that's all they are. Look at a baby. 22, she was tiny, like my hand. I'm looking at her photos and telling myself, how egoistic can you want to do that to someone? They want to come from me. They can come from me. From my baby, and you stay away from me.
Now your internet was doing some crazy things there, Lurleen. But I know what you were saying because, you know, I know the story. And for those of you that are watching, what she's saying is that the police officers, they stole her information, and inside a folder was information about her daughter who passed away when she was 22 weeks old. And they talked about to the son how they wanted to rape the daughter, and she's having a moment for that. But your internet went out there. Guys, I will say this. I did some research on RCMP as well, Fenton, and they really do have some corruption issues.
Yeah.
I mean, I pulled this one right here. I want to show you guys something because it's crazy. This is the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, a beloved national icon rocked by sexual abuse and harassment. Now, based on what I saw today with my research of the RCMP, they have some sexism issues. You know, they've even set aside like $1.5 million just to settle a couple of lawsuits that they've had. So they have some issues. They definitely have some issues. And
the thing is, in Canada, Alberta is like the fourth largest province. There's 10 provinces in Canada, And Alberta only has less than 4 million people, and there's just 40 million in Canada. Yet 20% of complaints use of force or abuse in any way is from Alberta. There's only less than 4 million people in the province. There's 4 million people in other provinces. Alberta has complaints. There's a reason for it, because they're protected. I don't care who you are, what money you have, what uniform you wear. If you wear that uniform with integrity and a total to protect people, it's not right to do it, because they're playing decent when they're police officers in any force at risk, because people see these and they're not. It's these bad apples need to be removed, but they're too protected. They won't remove.
Well, it looks like we lost her there. Yeah, it looks like are you there?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it looks like we were having some technical difficulties. But you know what? That's okay, because, for the majority of this show, we've gotten the bulk of what we needed out, because, I don't think that you are, I really believe you're going to be safe. I really do believe that, because I believe that the prayers of the righteous availeth much. And you have a lot of people praying for you. So I believe, and I dispatch angels right now, Lurleen, to your hotel room, to your car, every single place that you walk. The angels are protecting you. You're going to be fine, and you're going to get out of this. And we're going to hang out right here in Orlando one day. I'm telling you. I wish I had a plane, Fenton, and I would just fly it over Canada right now and put a rope. I know I watch too much TV. I watch way too much television, but I would absolutely send her the help that she needed if I could right now, to be honest with you.
I know you would. I know. I want to say something, Lurleen, in relation to Ella. There's something very special about you, Ella. Something very, very special that comes through, not just from your show, just from you as a person, from your pictures. I could even pick that up. There's something very special, and I think life is going to be something very, very new is going to be happening for you. Something very, very substantial and something really good. And you're a good person. And you deserve everything that comes your way in life. And on behalf of Lurleen, and certainly for me, I would like to thank you so much for your real, genuine concern, because that's magic. You're just a magical person.
Thank you. Thank you. To God be all the glory. We've all been there. We've all been through things when we've needed someone. And I think that the lesson in life from when you go through things is to pass it forward. So whenever God has been a blessing to you, it is to be a blessing to other people. And I haven't stopped thinking about you from the very first day we talked, Lurleen. You have been in my heart. You have been in my prayers. And I can't wait to meet you in person, you and the boys. And you're going to make it through this. Do you hear me? You have to. You have to survive this.
I'm not
you can't.
It's just, I don't want, they're the only family I have, and I'm not going to be part of my boys. I can't. We want to leave. We do not want to be here. We want to leave. They can have Canada. I don't care. Just let my family go. That's all I want.
Well, Fenton, you've been in contact with a lot of the officials, and you know a lot more about what needs to be done. So I want to definitely stay in touch with you,
Sure.
And you, Lurleen, of course, so that whatever it is that they say that we need to do, this is a we thing. Okay? You're not in this by yourself, and it's money that we have to come up with. Well, then, we'll just have to rob a bank. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Lord have mercy. Let me rebuke that, because that's the last thing I need is for somebody knock on my door and say, well, you said it. But no, we will do whatever we collectively have to do to pool our resources together.
Sure.
To get her up out of there. If that's what it has to do, we got to buy a plane ticket, and they say, okay, we'll get the hell out of here. Let's hurry up. Listen, I would be so ready to leave if I had to leave walking.
Yeah.
I'd be like, which way is it to the border? I just need one
Oh,
foot
we
over.
swim.
You know what I'm saying?
Swim if
But
we
I
could.
want you to rest tonight, sweetheart, knowing that you do not have to leave that hotel tomorrow or the next day or the next day or the next day or the next day. And
Thank
then
you so
God
much.
will provide from that point. As far as food is concerned, he's got that covered too. All right? So that you
Thank
can
you.
rest. You know what broke my heart today, Lurleen? And I have to say this. You and I were talking earlier, and you said, Ella, I'll call you when the boys wake up, because you didn't want to awake them because you felt like they would have to be in the car tomorrow. And you wanted them to get as much time in a bed. And that just bothered my spirit, because I said, there's no reason in the world a woman like this who has given. The Bible says, give and it will be given to you, good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, that with the same measure you meet, it will be met back to you. So I am speaking that coming back to you in your life, because you've put it out there. It's time for it to chase you down. So you don't have to worry about food. You're not going to have to, and everything that you've lost, he's going to bring it back. He did it to Job. Everything Job lost, he gave it back to him. More than he had. So I'm speaking that more into your life. I am feeling rejuvenated because I know in my heart, I feel it, that God is going to restore you. I can see you now telling this story nationwide. People are going to hear about this and how you survived it, you know? But I'm looking at the comments over here, different people just encouraging you, and what is that?
Thank you
Thanks,
all
all your
so
blessing.
much.
Thanks for having this thing. Jacob, listen, we're family. This is my sister, and there isn't anything. I would come to Canada now, and they'd really have problems if I came to Canada. I'm telling you, don't let the Ella Johnson show fool you. I got a little hood still left in me, okay? So, sometimes we might need to bring that hood out when it's necessary. But no, seriously. I mean, we have to do whatever we need to do to look at this. Look at this, Lurleen. There's another night for you, sweetie.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Scott. I think it is. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
So what we need to do then, guys, everybody that has agreed to pay for a night, what I will do is, how many nights is that we got? We have my 2, Yolanda's 3, that's 5 plus 6. So I will just take care of 6 nights so that we can just do it all with one card. And then I'll just collect from those folks. Make it easier.
Thank you very much.
So when we get off the broadcast, just have, just have them give me a call and we can go ahead and do that. I may have to, because my bank is like, Ella, you show? Because, they'd be like, girl, because I have a lot of fraudulent activity on my account. So my bank will stop stuff sometimes. You know how it is, because I'll go off. So they're like, no, we don't need to clear anything with Ella. We need to check with her first. But anyway, it's all good, because we're in this thing together, sweetie. And I just want you to do me a favor before your internet messes up again. I want you to look in the camera and I want you to talk to RCMP. What do you want them to know?
I want you to know that I don't think everybody's bad in the RCMP. There's some very, very good, decent men and women in it. And some of them I'm honored to call my friends. But the bad apples, you guys need to kick them out, because they'll end up getting you killed, because people will see you as the enemy instead of the real bad apple. My family just wants to go home. You've told us you'll drop the charges if we apologize. We're not going to apologize for being victims, but just let us go. We've done nothing wrong, and we've saved your officers' lives. We've saved them. You've told us we've saved one particular officer's family. This guy had his address. Surely the least you owe us is to allow us to be a family and to be free and to live our life. That's all I want. I don't want anything else. I just want to be able to leave this country with my son's service dog, get on with our lives, and just never come back here. So I'm just asking you to please have some humanity and stop looking at the political bullshit and just realize that we're actually helping you, because by exposing these corrupt officers, we're helping you to protect other officers, because they're not all bad, but these ones are filthy.
Cheryl, I appreciate the humor. That's so cute. She says, "You're not too far to the border. Just run."
Oh, yeah, I wish.
I wish it were that easy too. I would probably try it. I would be that person in Canada that they would be like, "This woman is trying everything to get out of here." I would even put on a different color wig to pretend I'm somebody else. What? I would even put on makeup to pretend I'm a white woman. Whatever it takes. I'm just saying. There's an idea, Lurleen. There's an idea. No,
the thing is, they would let me and my other son go, and they'll keep my other one, and that's not happening.
That's not happening now. We're going to do this thing. Everybody is going to walk out of there healthy and whole. God is going to restore you. I declare that right now. Does anybody have anything else to say before we get out of here? Anything else you want to say, Lurleen?
I just want to say thank you so much to everybody who's put a comment up, who's praying for us, who has listened to the show, to you, Ella, to Brianna, Finton, everybody who is there for us. Thank you so much. I can never thank you personally, but please know that you're in my heart.
All right. Anything you would like to say, Finton, before we get out of here?
Sure. Thanks so much for your genuine concern and your real friendship towards Lurleen. I think it'll be something that will last for many years to come.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're going to be at my wedding. So that means you if there's going to be one ever. But anyway, guys, I'm so glad. Thank you all so much for tuning in to the Ella Johnson Show tonight. As you can tell, this was a different kind of broadcast. But this story needed to be told, because who knows? Maybe God will put it in their hearts to say, you know what, release her, and that's what we're hoping for. That's what we're praying for. But Lurleen, let's stick around so we can take care of this for you, so you can rest tonight. And all of you that have agreed to help, just reach out to me, inbox me on Facebook. Let's settle everything up so we can take care of this beautiful woman and her family, so they can rest for the rest of the week. And then we'll pick up where we need to next week. But on tomorrow night, we'll be right back here on the Ella Johnson Show. I'm bringing some of my friends along, and we're going to talk about race in America. You guys think y'all have problems over there in Ireland, Canada. We got some problems right here too. All right. So we're going to talk about that tomorrow night, and the verdict with George Floyd, and, reactions from all of that. And we'll be right back here at 8 p.m. Eastern tomorrow night. So guys, listen, let's get out of here. Everybody have a wonderful evening. And thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you tomorrow night, same time.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Ella Johnson Show.